Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Rashad Bennett. I am 34 years old. And until recently, I thought I knew exactly what happiness looked like. It looked like sitting at the Marshall in downtown Chicago, surrounded by the warm glow of their wood-fired ambience, celebrating my engagement with my fiancée and our closest friends. The farm-to-table cuisine was perfect. The wine was flowing. The low murmur of conversation and the faint clink of glasses made everything feel soft around the edges. Across the table, Tyrone and his wife Latoya were smiling at us, leaning in like they were watching the opening scene of a romantic movie. My fiancée, Tanisha, sat beside me in a deep blue dress that caught the light every time she moved. She had her hand lightly resting on my forearm, her fingers tracing absent-minded patterns against my skin, and for a moment I truly believed this was the beginning of the life I had always wanted. "So, when is the big day?" Latoya asked, raising her glass toward us, her eyes bright with excitement. "We need to know how much time we have to get in shape before all the photos." Everyone laughed. I turned to Tanisha, already smiling in anticipation of the answer we had been circling around for weeks. Tanisha laughed too, that carefree sound that used to undo me every time I heard it. "Well," Tanisha said, tilting her head, "we are still figuring things out. I mean, I want to make sure I'm making the right choice." Tyrone chuckled and shook his head. "Cold feet already? Come on now. You two are perfect together. You are the steady couple we all point at when things get messy." I felt my chest warm at that. I squeezed Tanisha's hand under the table. For a moment, everything still felt normal. That was when Tanisha said it, in the same casual tone someone might use to talk about the weather. "Obviously, I am dating other men. He is not my best option, just my current one." At first, I thought I misheard her. Then I saw Tyrone's face change from amusement to shock, his smile evaporating. Latoya's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips, her eyes going wide. A strange silence fell over the table, swallowing the music and conversation around us. Even the air seemed to thicken. Tanisha kept laughing, like she had just told the funniest joke in the world. "Girl," Latoya finally said quietly, her voice tight, "what did you just say?" Tanisha rolled her eyes slightly. "Relax. I am kidding. You all look like I just confessed a murder or something." She laughed again, but it landed flat. Inside me, something shifted. It was not anger, not even hurt at first. It was clarity. Sharp, clean, undeniable clarity, like a window had been wiped free of fog and I could suddenly see the street outside in perfect detail. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor, the sound cutting through the restaurant like a blade. Every movement felt deliberate, controlled, as if I were watching myself from somewhere above. Latoya looked up at me. "Rashad," she whispered. Tanisha's hand slipped off my arm. "Where are you going?" she asked, still smiling, though a hint of confusion crept into her eyes. I reached for my jacket hanging on the back of my chair, slid it on, and buttoned it carefully like I had all the time in the world. "Congratulations," I said to Tanisha, my voice calm. "You just saved us both a lot of time and money." Tanisha blinked. "What? It is just a joke." She laughed again, but now it sounded forced, brittle around the edges. "Babe, sit down. You are being dramatic." I tucked my wallet from my pocket, pulled out enough cash to cover our entire meal and a generous tip, and placed it neatly beside my plate. "A joke," I repeated with a small nod. "That is exactly what this has been." Tyrone started to stand up. "Man, maybe you should." I held up my hand without looking at him. "No need," I said quietly. She was completely honest about how she feels. I appreciate that level of transparency. Tanisha's laughter faded entirely now, replaced by a frown. "Rashad, stop. You know I play around like that. You are really going to make this weird." I ignored the way her voice sharpened and turned toward the front of the restaurant. The entire place seemed to be watching us. Conversations paused, forks hovering above plates. I did not care. The walk to the door felt like the longest and shortest 20 steps of my life. With each step, the future I had imagined crumbled a little more, but instead of dread, I felt lighter. Behind me, Tanisha's voice rose, growing louder and more desperate. "You are seriously going to leave over a joke? Are you that insecure?" I did not turn around. I did not respond. I pushed open the door and walked out of the Marshall into the cool Chicago evening air. The city's movement rushing around me like a river. I had just stepped back and after being stuck on the bank for far too long. My phone started buzzing before I even reached the corner. Text after text, call after call, Tanisha's name flashing again and again across the screen. I stopped under a streetlight and watched the screen light up, then go dark, then light up again. My heart, surprisingly, stayed steady. I opened my phone long enough to block her number. Then I opened my social media accounts and blocked her there too. Then I blocked her email. My hands moved with the same deliberate calm I had felt at the table. The engagement ring she had thrown at me as I left, more out of habit than melodrama, was still in my jacket pocket. I pulled it out and looked at it under the streetlight, the diamond catching the light. For the first time since I bought it, I smiled at it. Best money I never spent, I said softly, then slipped it back into my pocket and started walking toward the parking garage. The next morning, I woke up with the strangest feeling. Not anxiety, not the heavy tension in my chest that had become my constant companion over the last year. Just quiet. No dread about checking my phone. No wondering what version of Tanisha I might be dealing with that day. I lay there for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, letting the unfamiliar peace settle over me. When I finally picked up my phone, I saw 47 missed calls from unknown numbers. Voicemails stacked on top of each other. She had been calling from Tyrone's phone, from LaToya's, maybe from every phone she could get her hands on. My thumb hovered over the voicemail icon. Then I selected them all and deleted them without listening to any of the messages. I showered, dressed, and headed to the office feeling lighter than I had in months. At work, my assistant Jalen handed me my coffee with a curious look. "Everything all right?" he asked. "You seem different today." I took a sip and leaned against the edge of my desk. "Never better," I said, and to my surprise, I meant it. "Seriously," Jalen said, studying my face. "You usually walk in here like you just finished a 12-round fight. Today you look like you just came back from vacation." I smiled a little. Maybe something like that. Around 10 o'clock, Jalen knocked on my office door again. "There is a woman here to see you," he said carefully. "She says she is your fiancée. She seems pretty upset." Through my office window, I could see the lobby. Tanisha stood there with her hair slightly disheveled, makeup smeared, clutching a box of tissues. She looked like she had been crying for hours. "Tell her I am not available," I said quietly. "And Jalen, if she comes back again, call security immediately." Jalen hesitated. "You sure, Rashad? She looks like she's going through it." I nodded. "I am sure." He headed back to the lobby. I watched as he approached Tanisha and spoke to her. Her face went through several emotions in quick succession: shock, anger, desperation. She started pointing toward my office, her voice loud enough that I could hear it even through the glass. "It was a joke," she cried. "A stupid joke. He is throwing away everything over a joke." Security walked over, professional, calm, but firm, and escorted her out. Tanisha turned once toward the elevator bank, as if she could see me through the walls. I stepped back from the window, out of sight. By lunch, the office line rang, and Jalen buzzed me. "It is Tyrone," he said. "He says it is urgent." I picked up, already knowing this was not going to be good news for Tanisha. "Man, what happened last night?" Tyrone asked, skipping any greeting. "She has been calling us nonstop. She showed up at our place at 1 in the morning, banging on the door. She is at our apartment now, crying her eyes out on the couch." I took a breath. Did she explain what part of dating multiple men was the funny part? Silence stretched on the other end. "Tyrone," I said, "did she tell you what she said?" "She said she was just playing," Tyrone replied finally. "That she made a stupid joke and you flipped out." "Look, maybe she said it wrong. Maybe she meant exactly what she said," I interrupted. "And honestly, I am grateful she was honest about it. I needed to hear it." "But you two have been together for 2 years," Tyrone said. "You were engaged. You cannot just throw that away." I stared out my office window at the city below. "I did not throw anything away," I said quietly. "She did when she decided I was not worth her commitment." Tyrone exhaled sharply. "LaToya keeps saying there has to be a way to fix this. She says everybody says things they do not mean sometimes." "I agree," I replied. "But most people do not call their fiancé their current option while talking about dating other men. That is not a slip of the tongue. That is a confession." After I hung up, I sat back and realized something important. Tyrone and Latoya were not trying to fix things because they believed in our relationship. They were trying to fix things because they could not handle the awkwardness. Her breakdown was complicating their lives. They just wanted everything to go back to normal, no matter what that meant for me. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I quit my job today, the message read. I cannot function. Please just talk to me. A minute later, another message came. I told everyone it was a joke. They all think you are overreacting. Another followed. My mom wants to know if the wedding is still on. What am I supposed to tell her? I stared at the messages for a long moment. Then I added the number to my blocked list and put my phone face down on the counter. I opened the cabinet above the fridge and reached for a bottle of good whiskey I had been saving. It was the kind Anisha always complained was too expensive, the kind I kept saying I would open for a special occasion. Somehow, those occasions never came. Tonight felt special enough. I poured a generous glass, sat on my couch, and let the silence of my apartment wrap around me like a blanket. The next morning, Jalen walked into my office with my coffee and a raised eyebrow. 16 more calls to the main line after hours, he said. All from different numbers, all asking for you. I told her you were in meetings all week. Do you want me to keep taking messages? No messages, I said. If she shows up again, security handles it immediately. No exceptions. Jalen nodded, but there was concern in his eyes. You doing all right with all of this? I thought about it for a moment. Honestly, I said, I feel better than I have in a long time. Around noon, my phone rang with a number I recognized, but had not seen in years. Naomi, Tanisha's older sister. You need to talk to her, Naomi said without preamble. She is falling apart. She lost her job because she cannot stop crying at work. This is ridiculous. Over one stupid comment. One stupid comment about dating other men while engaged to me, I replied. Naomi sighed. She was drunk. She misspoke. You know she loves you. You have seen her at her worst. This is not who she really is. I leaned back in my chair. Naomi, if someone asked you to describe your relationship with your husband, would dating other men ever come out of your mouth? Drunk or sober? There was a long pause on the other end. That is different, Naomi said finally, though she did not sound convinced. No, it is not, I said. She said what she meant. I just finally heard her clearly. Naomi's tone turned sharper. So, you're just going to abandon someone you love because they made one mistake? I'm not abandoning anyone, I replied. I am choosing not to marry someone who considers me a placeholder until something better comes along. Naomi exhaled loudly, muttered something under her breath, and then hung up. After Naomi's call, I sat in silence for a few minutes, staring at the framed photograph on my desk from our engagement party. In the photo, Tanisha was smiling at me with what I had once believed was pure affection. Now I could not help wondering how many calculations were spinning behind that smile. Each conversation I had that week made my decision feel more justified. Nobody was asking why she had said what she said. Nobody was questioning her judgment. They only wanted me to pretend it never happened, so they would not have to be uncomfortable. But I had heard her clearly for the first time in our entire relationship, and there was no way I was going back to carefully ignoring the truth. 2 weeks passed after that night at the Marshall, and the situation shifted from painful to almost surreal. Word traveled fast in our social circle. Apparently, Tanisha had been very busy trying to control the narrative. Jalen buzzed my office intercom one afternoon. Tyrone is online too again, he said. He says it is urgent. I picked up. Man, you need to hear this, Tyrone said, his voice tight. Latoya just got off the phone with our friend Candace from yoga. She was at brunch yesterday and overheard Tanisha talking to some guy. Like really talking. Define really talking, I said. Laughing, whispering, touching, hand-holding, leaning on him, the whole thing, Tyrone said. When Candace asked who he was, Tanisha introduced him as someone she has been seeing for a few months. Not casually, seeing seriously. I leaned back in my chair and let that sink in. Months, I repeated. That is what Candace said, Tyrone replied. And here's the real kicker. When Candace mentioned that you two were engaged, Tanisha said, and I quote, that is complicated right now. I could not help it. I laughed. Complicated, I said. That is one way to put it. Tyrone was quiet for a moment. Rashad, he said slowly, I owe you an apology. Latoya and I thought maybe she just misspoke at dinner, but this changes everything. It does not change anything for me, I said. It just confirms I made the right decision. After that call, the phone stopped ringing so often. The texts from mutual friends slowed and then stopped altogether. Nobody was asking me to work things out anymore. The silence was its own kind of statement. That Friday afternoon, Jalen knocked on my door again with an expression I was starting to recognize, a mixture of concern and unwilling amusement. "There is a situation downstairs," he said. "Tanisha is in the lobby again, but this time she is not alone. She brought her mother." I walked to the window and looked down. Tanisha's mother, usually composed and elegant, looked frustrated and embarrassed. Tanisha was gesturing wildly, clearly explaining something with increasing desperation. "Jalen," I said, "call security and have them escort both of them out." Politely but firmly. "Already done," he said, "but you might want to hear what they said to the receptionist." I raised an eyebrow. "Her mother demanded to speak with you about this ridiculous misunderstanding," Jalen continued. When security approached, Tanisha started shouting about how everyone was taking a joke too seriously and how you were being manipulative by ignoring her. "Manipulative?" I repeated, almost amused. "That is what she said," Jalen replied. Her mother looked mortified and kept apologizing to everyone in the lobby. I watched through the window as security walked them toward the elevator. Tanisha's mother was clearly angry, but not at the guards. She was staring at her daughter with a disappointment that seemed heavy enough to bend her shoulders. That evening, I decided to treat myself to dinner at a place Tanisha had never liked. There was a small Italian restaurant over in Bronzeville that served rich, slow-cooked dishes that she always claimed were too heavy and too ethnic for her taste. The owner, Mr. Porter, had been running the place for 30 years. As I sat enjoying a plate of osso buco that melted off the bone, my phone buzzed again with a text from an unknown number. "I know you are reading this," the message said. "Everyone thinks I am crazy now. I lost my job because I cannot concentrate. My own mother thinks I am lying about it being a joke. My friends will not return my calls. Are you happy now?" I read the message twice, then deleted it and blocked the number. Mr. Porter walked over and nodded toward my empty plate. "Everything good with the food?" he asked. "Perfect," I said. "Exactly what I needed." He glanced at my phone on the table. "Bad news." "Actually, no," I said. "Just someone finally facing the consequences of their choices." Mr. Porter nodded slowly, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Those are usually the people who think consequences are something that happens to other people," he said gently. I nodded. "Exactly." We shared a quiet understanding. Then he headed back toward the kitchen while I finished my wine. The weekend brought new developments. Sunday morning, my phone rang again. It was Latoya. "I thought you should know," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Tanisha showed up at our apartment last night around 11 o'clock. She was drunk and kept saying she needed to explain everything to someone who would listen." "Did you let her in?" I asked. "Honestly," Latoya replied, "no. Tyrone, and I did not feel safe with how upset she was. She was loud enough in the hallway that our neighbors came out to see what was happening. Mrs. Jenkins from upstairs even called the building supervisor because she thought someone was being attacked." "What was Tanisha saying?" I asked. "The same thing over and over," Latoya said. "That it was a joke. That everyone was overreacting. That you were turning people against her." But she kept contradicting herself. First it was a joke. Then it was a misunderstanding. Then she said she was nervous, and the wrong words came out. "Nervous about what?" I asked. "That is exactly what we asked," Latoya said. She cannot give a straight answer. She just kept saying you were supposed to understand her sense of humor better. When Tyrone told her that what she said did not sound like a joke, she accused him of choosing sides and stormed off down the hall. It was rough. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed and realized something important. This was no longer about that night at the Marshall. It was about her complete inability to take responsibility for anything. Her escalating desperation. Her attempts to manipulate everyone around her into fixing a mess she had created herself. This was who Tanisha, actually, was when things did not go her way. I had just been too close to see it clearly. Monday morning brought the most interesting update yet. Jalen handed me my coffee with a knowing smile. "You will want to hear this one," he said. "I ran into Chantel from Powell Marketing this morning, the firm where Tanisha used to work. Apparently, Tanisha did not quit like she told everyone. She was fired." I raised an eyebrow. "For what?" Unprofessional conduct and excessive personal calls during work hours, Jalen said. Chantel said Tanisha spent entire days crying at her desk and bothering coworkers with her personal problems. When her supervisor tried to talk to her about it, she had a complete breakdown and accused everyone of being unsympathetic to her emotional crisis. I nodded slowly. A crisis she created, I said. Exactly, Jalen replied. Chantel said it was the most unprofessional thing she had ever seen. Tanisha is telling people you cost her the job by breaking up with her. Even her job loss was somehow my fault in her mind. But the more I heard, the more obvious it became that her life was unraveling on its own, without any input from me. The most revealing part was not her behavior. It was how quickly everyone else saw through it once they stopped trying to fix the situation and simply responded to what was in front of them. Without me there to absorb her drama and explain it away, she had to face the genuine reactions of other people. And clearly those reactions were not what she expected. The truth has a way of surfacing when people stop trying to bury it to keep the peace. 3 weeks after that dinner at the Marshall, I learned just how deep Tanisha's deception really ran. It started with a phone call from Leon, a mutual friend I had not spoken to since college. Leon had moved to Boston years ago and only visited Chicago occasionally. I need to tell you something, he said without preamble. I was in the city last weekend for work, staying at the Marriott off Michigan Avenue. I saw Tanisha in the hotel bar around 10 o'clock Friday night. She was not alone. My stomach tightened, not with jealousy, but with a strange sense of validation. Who was she with? I asked. Some guy, Leon said. Tall, clean-cut, looked like a consultant or something. They were not just having drinks. They were all over each other. When I walked over to say hello, she looked like she had seen a ghost. What did she say? I asked. She introduced him as her friend Reginald, Leon replied. But here's the weird part. Reginald had no idea who I was or how I knew her. When I mentioned that we were all friends and that you two were engaged, he got this confused look and asked, engaged to who? I felt that familiar clarity wash over me again, the same calm I'd felt when I stood up at the Marshall. So she never mentioned being engaged, I said. Apparently not, Leon replied. Reginald seemed genuinely shocked. He kept looking between her and me like he was trying to solve a puzzle. She started stammering, trying to explain, but it made no sense. I left pretty quickly because it was getting awkward, but Reginald was asking her a lot of questions as I walked away. After Leon hung up, I sat quietly, staring out at the city skyline. How long had this been going on? How many separate lives had she been living? The answer came sooner than I expected. Tuesday afternoon, Jalen buzzed me again. There is a gentleman here asking to speak with you, he said. He says his name is Reginald Stafford, and it is about Tanisha. He seems legitimate. I told Jalen to send him in. Reginald walked into my office in a tailored suit, carrying a quiet tension in his shoulders. He looked uncomfortable, but determined. I apologize for showing up unannounced, he said, taking a seat when I gestured. But I needed to speak with you directly. I think we have both been lied to. I am listening, I said. Reginald took a breath. I've been seeing Tanisha for 4 months. She told me she had ended a long-term relationship and was taking time to figure out what she wanted. She said she was single but not ready for anything serious yet. For months, I repeated. She told me that when your friend Leon mentioned an engagement at the hotel bar, there was some mistake, Reginald continued. But I went home and started thinking about a lot of things that did not add up. The time she could not see me, the phone call she took in private, the fact that I had never been to her apartment. When I confronted her, she sent me these. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to a long text thread before handing it to me. The messages were a masterpiece of manipulation. She told Reginald that I was an ex who would not accept the breakup, that I was mentally unstable and spreading lies about an engagement that never existed. She claimed I was harassing her and that she had been secretive to protect him from my dangerous behavior. I almost believed it, Reginald said, until I did some basic research. Your engagement announcement was in the Chicago Tribune Society section 3 months ago. There are photos from the party on social media. Either you are the most elaborate stalker in history, or she has been lying to both of us. I could not help a small, humorless smile. What gave it away? I asked. The timeline, Reginald replied. She said you had broken up 6 months ago, but the engagement announcement is dated 3 months ago. unless you proposed to someone who had already left you. It did not make sense. That is when I realized something was very wrong. I exhaled slowly. So what happens now? I asked. Reginald stood up. I ended it Sunday night, he said. Told her I cannot date someone who lies on that level. She had a complete breakdown. Started screaming about how everyone was abandoning her over misunderstandings. She also mentioned that you were ruining her life over a joke. Some joke, I said. That is what I thought, Reginald replied. What kind of joke involves dating multiple people while engaged? He buttoned his jacket. I wanted you to know not everyone she dates is willing to go along with deception. And I thought you deserved to know how deep this goes. After he left, I sat in my office, hands folded, letting the facts settle into place. She had not just been unfaithful. She had been living completely separate lives. With me, she was the committed fiancée planning a future. With Reginald, she was the recently single woman taking things slowly. Who knew how many other versions of herself she had invented? That evening, Tyrone called with another update that painted the picture even more clearly. Latoya ran into Alicia Wells at the gym today, he said. You remember Alicia from our college group? She has been friends with Tanisha on social media, but had not seen her in person in a while. Alicia mentioned seeing the engagement announcement online and asked about wedding plans. Tanisha told her the engagement was fake, said you pressured her into it for appearances, and she was planning to break it off but did not know how. When did this conversation happen? I asked. 2 weeks ago, Tyrone said. A week before that dinner at the Marshall. The pieces fell neatly into place. Tanisha had already been telling people our engagement was fake, already planning her exit strategy while wearing my ring and talking about venues. That comment at dinner had not been a joke or a slip. It had been the truth finally slipping out. Wednesday brought the final confirmation I did not know I needed. Jalen walked in and put a thick envelope on my desk. This was delivered by messenger, he said. No return address. Inside were printed screenshots of social media conversations, dating app profiles, and photos. A short note was attached. Thought you should see who she actually is. A concerned friend. The dating profiles were active and recent. Multiple apps, all with photos I recognized. Every profile listed her as single and looking for genuine connections. The conversations showed her arranging dates, flirting extensively, and telling several men she was finally free to explore what she actually wanted in a relationship. One conversation from 2 weeks before the dinner at the Marshall stood out. She told someone that she was going through the motions with her current situation until she figured out her next move. I put the papers back in the envelope, locked it in my desk drawer, and sat back with a small, tired smile. Every desperate phone call, every attempt to frame this as a misunderstanding, every claim that I was overreacting, it was all projection. She was panicking because her carefully constructed web of lies was unraveling. The woman who had accused me of abandoning her over a joke had been systematically planning her own exit while keeping me as a safety net. The only thing she had not planned for was me having enough self-respect to walk away immediately. With her safety net gone and her other options drying up as the truth spread through our circle, she was finally facing the consequences of her choices. By the 5th week, the situation had turned into something that felt more like a case study in self-destruction than my personal life. Jalen came in one morning, shaking his head. She called 17 times after hours yesterday, he said. The night security guard says she also showed up around 9 o'clock, demanding to speak with you about clearing up lies people are spreading. What did security do? I asked. Escorted her out, Jalen replied, but not before she made a scene in the lobby. Apparently, she accused them of being part of some conspiracy to isolate her. He hesitated. Rashad, she looked rough. Really rough. I was not surprised. Latoya had mentioned during our last conversation that Tanisha was staying at her mother's house because she could no longer afford her apartment. Without the job she had lost due to her own behavior, and without the financial stability she had once assumed I would provide, reality was finally setting in. Around noon that same day, Jalen buzzed me again. There's a call for you, he said. Dr. Wells from Lakefront Psychology Associates. She says it is regarding a patient consultation and mentions your name specifically. I took the call. Dr. Wells' voice was professional, but clearly frustrated. Mr. Bennett, she said, I am calling because one of my patients has been using our sessions to discuss elaborate plans to contact you. She has mentioned your workplace, your routine, and seems to have very detailed knowledge of your schedule. The hair on my neck stood up. How detailed? I asked. She knows what time you usually arrive at work, where you often eat lunch, and which gym you use, Dr. Wells said. She has been tracking your movements and interpreting ordinary activities as signs that you secretly want to reconcile. Are you suggesting she is stalking me? I asked. I'm suggesting you should be aware of the situation, Dr. Wells replied. She believes everyone in her life is conspiring against her relationship with you. She is convinced that if she can just explain things to you properly, everything will return to normal. There is no relationship, I said. I ended our engagement 5 weeks ago when she announced she was dating other men. She was seeing at least 2 other men while engaged to me. One of them came in my office to confirm it. This was not a misunderstanding. There was a long pause on the other end. She has told me it was a poorly timed joke that you misinterpreted, Dr. Wells said quietly. She did not mention the other men. That changes the context considerably. She's been lying to you the same way she lied to everyone else, I said. I appreciate you letting me know. After Dr. Wells hung up, promising to address the stalking behavior and treatment, I sat there for a moment, feeling a strange mix of unease and relief. Her delusion had grown so deep that she had convinced herself she could rewrite history if she just tried hard enough. That afternoon, Charisse from Human Resources knocked on my door with a folder in hand. We need to discuss a security issue, she said. Tanisha has been contacting employees throughout the building, trying to get information about you or convince them to deliver messages. Who has she approached? I asked. At least 6 people across 3 different floors, Charisse replied. She approached Erica from accounting in the parking garage yesterday, asking about your schedule and whether you had mentioned her. When Erica said she did not know you personally, Tanisha accused her of lying and got aggressive. How aggressive? I asked. Loud enough that security had to intervene, Charisse said. But that is not the worst part. She pulled out her phone and showed me photos taken by concerned colleagues. Tanisha sitting in her car across the street, clearly watching the building entrance. Tanisha standing at the corner coffee shop with a clear view of our lobby. Tanisha approaching people near the revolving doors with a strained expression. She has been waiting outside the building at different times, approaching employees as they leave, Charisse said. Several people have complained that they feel uncomfortable. I felt a heavy calm settle over me. Give her photo to building security, I said. If she steps on the property again or harasses any employee, I want them to call the police. This is crossed into stalking. Already done, Charisse said. There is one more thing. She has been telling people that you are having some kind of mental health crisis and that your family asked her to help bring you back to reality. She even described a conversation with your sister about planning an intervention. I frowned. I did not have a sister, I said. Charisse's eyebrows shot up. She described her in detail, Charisse said. That is concerning. That evening, I drove out to visit my parents in Oak Park. If Tanisha was mentioning my family, they needed to know what was going on. My mother's reaction was immediate and sharp. She called here last week. My mother said as soon as I explained why I had come, I was going to tell you, but your father said it was not worth upsetting you. What did she say? I asked. That you were going through a difficult time and had cut off contact with everyone who cared about you, my mother replied. She wanted us to help convince you to get professional help. My father looked up from his newspaper. I told her that if you needed help, you would ask for it, he said. Then I hung up. She called back 3 more times, my mother added. Each time, the story got more dramatic. By the last call, she claimed you had threatened to hurt yourself if she did not take you back. I closed my eyes briefly. That is completely false, I said. We know, my father replied. You have seemed more at peace the past few weeks than we have seen you in a long time. What actually happened? So I told them everything. About that night at the Marshall, about the other men, about Reginald's visit, about the dating profiles and the stalking. My parents listened without interrupting. When I finished, my father folded his newspaper neatly. Son, he said, this is not someone trying to fix a mistake. This is someone who does not live in the same reality as the rest of us. My mother reached over and squeezed my hand. You did the right thing walking away, she said softly, no matter how painful it was. Friday morning brought the most ridiculous development yet. Jalen came in with a look that was half disbelief, half reluctant excitement. You're going to love this, he said. Tanisha hired a lawyer. I stared at him. For what? Harassment charges, Jalen said. Against you. I blinked. Against me. I repeated. Mr. Harris from Harrison Associates called this morning, Jalen continued. Apparently, Tanisha retained them to pursue legal action for stalking, harassment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. According to her, you have been following her, tracking her movements, and systematically turning her friends and family against her. She claims you orchestrated a campaign to destroy her reputation because she tried to end a relationship. I stared for a moment, then started laughing. She tried to end a relationship, I said. That is her story now. What did you tell Mr. Harris? I asked once I stopped laughing. I suggested he verify his client's claims before proceeding, Jalen said. I also mentioned that we have security footage of her repeated attempts to access this building, and that several employees have filed complaints about her harassment. He asked if I was sure about the timeline. When I confirmed that she is the one doing the stalking, he said he needed to review the case more carefully. I got the sense that conversation with Tanisha is not going to go the way she thinks it will. By the end of the third month, the harassment case had quietly disappeared. No more calls from Mr. Harris. No letters. Filing false accusations turned out not to be a very strong legal strategy when the evidence pointed in the exact opposite direction. 3 months after that night at the Marshall, my life had settled into something I had almost forgotten was possible. Genuine peace. My days were filled with work I actually enjoyed. Evenings were quiet, spent reading, going to the gym, meeting friends for dinner, or just watching a movie without worrying about what emotional storm might be brewing on the other end of my phone. Dr. Wells sent a message through proper channels to say that her patient was no longer talking about trying to contact me. Apparently, Tanisha had shifted to blaming modern relationships and toxic expectations for her problems. I shrugged when I read it and moved on. I did not care what story she told anymore. As long as she stayed away from my life, she could say whatever she needed to say to keep herself from looking in the mirror. One afternoon, Jalen walked into my office with that now familiar glint in his eye. Incoming entertainment, he said. Reception just called. Tanisha is here again, but this time, she is not alone. She brought a man with her. An older gentleman, well-dressed. She was very loud about him being her new fiancé. I set down my pen. Her new fiancé, I repeated. According to the receptionist, Jalen said, Tanisha wanted to introduce him to you to prove she has moved on and is happy. She kept saying that you needed to see what you lost so you would stop interfering with her happiness. I shook my head. What did security do? Escorted them both out. As usual, Jalen said. But here's the interesting part. The gentleman, Harold King, according to the sign-in sheet, seemed confused about why they were even there. The receptionist heard him asking her why she needed to prove anything to her ex if she was truly happy. Smart man, I said. It gets better, Jalen replied. As they were leaving, she started explaining that you were obsessed with her and could not accept that she had found someone better. Harold asked her why an obsessed ex would refuse all contact and have her escorted out by security. She did not have an answer. I sat back in my chair, genuinely impressed by her ability to cling to her narrative even as it fell apart in her hands. That afternoon, I decided to take a long lunch at a small bistro in the West Loop, the kind of place that served excellent food without pretense. I lingered over a plate of grilled salmon and roasted vegetables, enjoying the simple act of eating a meal without checking my phone every few minutes. When I finished and looked out the window, I saw a familiar figure sitting alone at an outdoor cafe across the street. Even from a distance, I could see the changes in Tanisha. She was constantly checking her phone, flinching a little every time it buzzed. She looked thinner, her hair pulled back in a style that seemed more functional than polished. She was wearing an outfit I recognized from one of her previous appearances at my office building weeks earlier. I paid my bill, stepped outside, and paused on the corner, undecided. Then Tanisha looked up and saw me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she stood up so quickly she knocked over her coffee cup, brown liquid splashing across the table. She rushed toward me with an expression that was part hope, part desperation, and part something like relief. Finally, she called out, I've been trying to reach you for months. We need to talk. I stopped on the sidewalk and let her approach, keeping a comfortable distance between us. Up close, the changes were even more obvious. Dark circles under her eyes, hands that trembled slightly. a jittery energy that suggested too little sleep and too much anxiety. "There is nothing to talk about," I said calmly. "Yes, there is," Tanisha insisted. "Everyone has the wrong idea about what happened. I need to explain what I actually meant that night." "You meant exactly what you said," I replied. "No, I did not," she said quickly. "I was nervous about the wedding planning, and I said something stupid. I have been trying to tell you that. You have been avoiding me for 3 months. You have been stalking me for 3 months," I corrected. Her face flushed. "I have not been stalking anyone," she said. "I have been trying to fix a misunderstanding that you will not let me fix." "There is no misunderstanding," I said. "You were seeing other men while engaged to me. Multiple men. For months." She shook her head violently. "That is not. Those are just friends," she said. "Friends you told you were single," I replied. "Friends who were shocked to learn you were engaged." Her mouth opened, then closed. "How do you?" She stopped, realizing she had just confirmed the truth. "It was not what you think," she whispered. "It was exactly what I think," I said. "And now everyone else thinks the same thing, now that they know the facts." "Everyone is wrong," Tanisha said, her voice rising. "You turned them all against me." I shook my head. "I have not spoken to anyone about you since that night," I said. "I did not have to. You have been doing all the talking." She frowned, genuinely confused. "What is that supposed to mean?" she asked. "It means every person who has distanced themselves from you did it based on your behavior, not anything I said," I replied. "You have told different stories to different people, trying to make yourself look good in each version. Eventually, those stories stopped matching up. People compared notes. That is all." She stood there, breathing quickly, like she had just run up a flight of stairs. For the first time, I saw something crack behind her eyes. Not anger, not denial, but a flicker of realization. "So what now?" she asked finally, her voice smaller than I had heard it since that night at the Marshall. "You just hate me forever?" "I do not hate you," I said. "I did not think about you at all anymore." It was the most honest thing I had ever said to her, and I could see it hit harder than any insult would have. "But we were engaged," Tanisha said, her voice shaking. "We were planning a life together." "You were planning a life with multiple people," I said evenly. "I was planning a life with someone who did not actually exist." She flinched at that. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at the pavement between us. "I should go," I said. "I hope you figure things out." I turned to walk away. "What about forgiveness?" she called after me. "What about second chances?" I paused and looked back at her. "Those are for people who take responsibility for their actions," I said. "You are still trying to convince people that reality is wrong." Her shoulders sagged at that. I turned and walked away, feeling strangely calm. 6 months later, I was having dinner with Tyrone and LaToya at a cozy soul food spot on the south side. Over dessert, LaToya cleared her throat. "We heard something about Tanisha," she said. "We figured you should know, or at least have the option not to know." I took a breath. "Go ahead," I said. "She moved back to Ohio," LaToya said. "Cleveland." Her mother finally stopped enabling everything and gave her an ultimatum: get professional help and stick with it, or find somewhere else to live. Tanisha chose to move in with an aunt for a while. "What about the new fiancé?" I asked. Tyrone shook his head. "Harold," he said, "lasted about 2 weeks after that day she brought him to your office. Apparently, he did some research and did not like what he found. He walked away quietly. No drama. She has been telling people he could not handle her emotional depth." I smiled faintly. "To dodging bullets," Tyrone said, lifting his glass. "To recognizing them in the first place," I replied, clinking my glass against his. As we left the restaurant and stepped into the warm evening air, we stood on the sidewalk for a moment, talking about weekend plans. For the first time in years, when I pulled out my phone to call a car, my mind drifted not to what crisis might explode next, but to what I wanted to do simply because it would make me happy. Maybe a road trip next month. Maybe finally signing up for that photography class I kept putting off. Maybe nothing more complicated than sleeping in on Saturday and making pancakes. As the car drove us through the city lights, I stared out the window and realized something important. The entire experience with Tanisha had not just taught me what I wanted in a partner. It had taught me something more valuable: the difference between someone having a bad moment and someone being a bad partner. Bad moments can be forgiven and worked through. Bad partners simply reveal who they are more clearly over time. That night at the Marshall, when she laughed and called me her current option, she had finally shown me who she actually was. Everything that followed, the lies, the manipulation, the stalking, the unraveling, was just confirmation. And for the first time in a very long time, I trusted myself enough to believe what I saw the first time and to walk away the moment the truth became clear. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.